Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Recent Reads on Sunday, in which I discuss the books that I read recently. Yes, I do. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. It's very cold here, at least, not as cold as, like, in Montana. Greg, with minus 20, if you look at Celsius. So we have minus 20 in the night, but it's like minus 2 or 3 Celsius. But it's bright and sunny. So, it's okay. It's winter, isn't it? And we didn't have any snow so far. It's just cold and sunny. But anyway, like you care for the weather report from Cologne. Let's talk books. The first book I want to only show you because I can't really talk about it yet, but I did read it, finish it, is Uncanny Valley by Anna Wiener, published in 2020. And this is one of the BookTube Prize books, nonfiction in the octafinal, so the first round, which will and I think end of next month, end of March. So I will be able to talk about the books beginning of April, and I give you my ranking of the 6 books in my category, of course. This is a memoir written by a woman who, when she was 25, she worked for a literary agent after having studied sociology, and then she decided to make a career switch and work for tech companies. First in New York for a startup, and then she moved to San Francisco, the Uncanny Valley, and worked for 2 or 3 different companies there. And that's her account of that time working for tech. I can't talk about it, like I said, but what I can tell you is that this book sent me down a rabbit hole of the Uncanny Valley, of course. I love that title. And I looked up, I give you a picture here of this. If you're not familiar, the Uncanny Valley is a term in, I don't know whether you can say robotics, but if there is a robot, a human-like robot, you would assume that the more human the robot looks, the more we like it and the more we can relate to it. But that's not true at all. So we like these, Star Wars R2D2 kind of robots. They seem human to us. We react emotionally to them. But when robots get really eerily looking like humans, there is this drop in acceptability, and that's called the Uncanny Valley. Anyway, you can look that up, but I went down a complete rabbit hole, at least for 1, if not 2 afternoons after finishing this book. The next book I finished, I can actually talk about, and that is another nonfiction book, Angela Saini, Inferior, first published in 2017. Angela Saini is an UK journalist, a science journalist, and I read a previous book by her, which was actually published 2 years later than this one, Superior, about race science, and I really liked it. I thought it was really good about racism and racism in science. And so I picked up her book about feminism because, as you know, I'm trying to educate myself more in the field of feminism and science and feminism. So this is Angela Saini's research looking at various fields of science, whether it's neuroscience, brain research or psychology or what have you, and taking the sometimes quite obviously sexist approach to that science, in which the overarching theme is finding scientific proof that women are inferior. I thought it was a really good book. My issue was not with the book, but I read 2 previous books about the same topic, Delusions of Gender by Cordelia Fine and Gina Rippon, Gendered Brain. They focus on mostly brain research, but that meant that this book didn't give me that much new insight, if you know what I mean. But I think if you're interested in sexism in science, and then I mean not sexism towards scientists, but in science itself, and you want to have a sort of journalistic, not too deep delve into the topic, then I can certainly recommend this one. And I can highly recommend her book about race, Superior, which was published in 2019. Next up is fiction. And if you're following my channel, you know probably that I have this year-long project in 2021 that I want to read spotlight sci-fi, especially female sci-fi writers, modern classics that I haven't read yet. And one of the authors that I definitely wanted to read was Nalo Hopkinson. And I read her debut novel, Brown Girl in the Ring, published in 1998. And this was a buddy read with Heidi from my reading life. And to start with the bad news, I did not really like this book. It didn't work for me. And Heidi will probably talk about it on her channel. But I think she's okay if I say it didn't work for her that well either. So the book is set in a dystopian, I should say Nalo Hopkinson was born in Jamaica, but lives in Canada. So the book is set in Canada, in Toronto, but with a definite Caribbean twist. So it's a Caribbean cast of characters, if you will. It's a dystopian future where the rich live cordoned off and the poor live in slums, and the poor neighborhoods are ruled by a crime boss called Rudy. The main characters are the generations of female. You have T-John, who is in her late 20s, her mother and her grandmother. And it's a mix of lore or fantasy. It's more a fantasy novel than sci-fi, I would say. So that was already maybe not a good fit for me, because as you know, fantasy most of the time doesn't gel with me that well. So the dystopian setting was actually nothing more than just a background. It didn't really play an important role in the story. The story didn't work for me, especially without giving spoilers. The characters doing things that just didn't fit at all with how we got to know the characters previously. And it seemed they had to do it because, plot reasons. And I'm never a fan of that. And then there is this romantic relationship at the center between T-John and the father of her child, Tony. And that relationship just irked the bloody hell out of me. I mean, he is horrible, and she's just like, yeah, let's walk into the sunset together. No, that didn't work for me at all. And there were some issues with plot that I don't want to get into because I don't want to spoil it. But I'm interested I know that some of my viewers really enjoy Hopkinson's work. So if you have read this and enjoy it, let me know. But unfortunately, it didn't work for me. Next up is another non-fiction book and a reread for me, even though I don't know whether I can actually count it as a reread. I read The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan together with Kathleen from Kathleen Ann. And I read the German version of this book when I was in my late teens, early 20s. But I couldn't remember the first thing about it. So it's technically a reread, but not really, if you know what I mean. Betty Friedan was one of the most prominent figures of the second feminist wave in the US. This book was published in 1963, and The Feminine Mystique is the way women are after the Second World War in the US, middle-aged white women are sort of lured into a certain life as housewives and mothers. There is not a matter of choice, it's just what they are destined to be. And some of them are quite happy, but most of them aren't. And Betty Friedan, who is of the same generation and try to be, the good housewife and mother. And then she started to research when she realized that she isn't happy. She started to research her classmates, who are also were in their 30s, beginning 30s, in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and then she wrote a book about this, yeah, uncalled and unnamed malaise that these women have by being forced into a certain destiny. I thought it was really interesting. Unfortunately, a lot of things that Betty Friedan writes about seem quite modern and current, which is frustrating given the fact that the book is almost 60 years old. I will say this looks at a certain segment of women. First of all, it's in the US. Second of all, it's white middle class women. So she doesn't talk about black women. She doesn't talk about women in the working class who don't have this, they are not within this feminine mystique housewife and mother thingy because they have to work. So it looks at a certain segment, and you should be aware of it. But within this segment, it's really interesting to read about how that worked, how various forces, without being I'm not conspiracy theory that everybody worked together in order to keep women at home, but it was a trend, a zeitgeist at that time. And then the legal framework, advertising, marketing, it all sort of worked together. So think Betty Draper of Mad Men, and then you know what I'm talking about. So I really enjoyed this reread, and I certainly enjoyed reading it together with Kathleen. And the last book I want to talk to you about is a graphic novel. Yes, I did read another graphic novel thanks to Mel's book club, a Read Around the World book club. I will leave a link of the Goodreads group down below, in which we read a book by a female author from a different country each month. And for February, we went to the Ivory Coast and we read Ayra by Margaret Aboué and Clément Oubréry. First published, I think, 2005 or something. And this one is the German translation by Kai Wilkson, but in the show notes, I will leave a link to the English translation. I couldn't get a hold of the English a book in time, so I bought the German one. But it's a graphic novel set in the 1970s and 80s in the Ivory Coast, in the main city there. Marguerite Aboué was educated in Paris, and she started to write books for children and young adults, and then returned, so to speak, to her home country and wrote about the time that she grew up. So the main character is Ayra, but this one, it's the first in, I think, a 6-book series. It focuses more on 2 of her best friends, and they are in their late teenage years, 18, 19, something like that. And you learn about the society they live in and the love triangles that ensue. It's quite funny. It shows the cliched life of women and men, but also a little bit of the politics. But it's not heavy-handed. It's more, if I say a light read, it sounds as if it's fluff. It's not fluff, but it's just also done in a very entertaining way. I really enjoyed it, and I'm thinking of getting the compilation, the 6 books or something in English, because I really had a good time reading that. And I'm also proud of myself because, as you might know, one of the other goals for 2021 was that I will do better with Mel's book club, the Read Around the World book club, that I will not, fall off the wagon and not read the books anymore. So January I did, February I did, and I already ordered the book for March. So yeah, me. hopefully I can carry on for the rest of the year. Anyway, these were the books that I read recently. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments. And yes, I know, again, some things never change, not in 2021 in any case, because I'm behind again with my comments. 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm still looking forward to your comments, and I will answer the comments, the backlog of comments, I hope this weekend and otherwise next week. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.